whether you're trying to close a deal or you're the one considering buying something, that whole thing about money can get a little bit emotionally charged.
For sure.
And that's actually what we're diving into today.
Nice.
So I know a lot of times when we're thinking about sales, our default mode is to really focus on logic and persuasion.
Right.
But the interesting thing is, a lot of times when people are hesitant or they say, I can't afford it, it's not really about the numbers.
That's so true.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's something much deeper.
Welcome to The Deep Dive, an intense exploration of how you show up in life, business, and relationships, and how they're all connected in the infinite thread that is you. So let's get into the dive. Here's your hosts, Marcus and Nara.
Thanks for joining us here on The Deep Dive. I'm Nara Daniels.
And I'm Marcus Harrison.
Let's dive in.
You know how money conversations can get kind of weird?
Yeah, totally.
It's like whether you're trying to close a deal or you're the one considering buying something, that whole thing about money can get a little bit emotionally charged.
For sure.
We're looking at the work of Coach Dan Gordon, and he has some really counterintuitive techniques for how to navigate these conversations.
Interesting.
He actually calls it the money conversation, which is kind of a cool way to put it.
It is.
And so we're going to just dive right into that.
Sounds good.
So I know a lot of times when we're thinking about sales, you're really trying to get somebody on board logically with why we're offering what we're offering. But the interesting thing is, and Coach Dan points this out, a lot of times when people are hesitant or they say, I can't afford it, it's not really about the numbers.
That's so true.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's something much deeper.
Yeah. And actually, that was the thing that I found most counterintuitive about his approach. And I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
That when people are like, no, I can't afford it, it's actually them bumping up against these deep-seated fears and anxieties that have nothing to do with what's actually in their bank account.
It's so true.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this in my own career, and I remember early on, whenever I had somebody who was a potential client, but they seemed hesitant about moving forward,
Okay.
I would go into this total frantic, pitch mode.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I've got to convince them logically why what I do is worth it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it felt so forced and so inauthentic.
Yeah.
And, looking back, I don't even think it was that effective.
Probably not. So, and likely because you were addressing the symptom,
Yeah.
right? The money objection as opposed to the root.
Yeah.
Which is that fear.
Exactly.
The fear of making the wrong decision or the fear of loss or sometimes even just disappointing other people.
Absolutely. So, okay, then what do we do?
Right.
How do we shift that?
Yeah.
Because if it's not about logic,
Right.
what's it about?
Well, it's about empathy
Okay.
and understanding.
Okay.
So instead of trying to overpower their objections, we need to lean into them a little bit.
Yeah.
Something as simple as saying, I understand and I appreciate your honesty.
Wow.
Right.
It feels so different.
It does.
It completely changes the energy of that whole conversation.
Yeah.
Instead of being in this adversarial position,
Totally.
you're like, okay, like I hear you.
Exactly.
You
You're
get it?
acknowledging and validating their feelings.
Yeah.
And that's where trust starts to get built.
Right.
It's when we can create a space where someone feels heard and understood that the entire dynamic shifts.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're more likely to open up and to share their true concerns.
Totally.
And to be receptive to solutions.
So then, okay, if we're not battling over affordability, then where do we go?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Okay. He talks about shifting the focus from affordability to possibility.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. And so he uses this technique called future pacing. And future pacing is really just about guiding someone to visualize those positive outcomes that become available if they move past that initial money hurdle.
So instead of dwelling on what feels limited right now,
Yeah.
you're helping them sort of see this brighter future.
Exactly. You're tapping into the power of imagination and possibility.
Okay.
So, for example, let's say someone's hesitant to invest in a program that could help them grow their business.
Okay.
Instead of focusing on that upfront cost, you might say, imagine yourself a year from now, having implemented these strategies, seeing a significant increase in your revenue and impact.
Yeah.
How would that feel?
Right.
What would be possible for you then?
Yeah.
Right. So you're helping them get out of that present moment.
It's almost like you're telling them a story.
You are telling them a story.
That helps them see what they want.
It is. And stories bypass logic.
Right.
And tap into emotion.
Yeah.
Which is key in these conversations.
That makes total sense.
And remember when someone says, I can't afford it, they're often speaking from a place of deep-seated conditioning
Yeah.
that associates money with scarcity and security.
Yeah. Like all those messages we get growing up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So by shifting the focus to possibility, we can help them challenge those limiting beliefs and open themselves up to a new way of thinking.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about crunching the numbers.
No.
It's about addressing that whole emotional
Right.
landscape that might be creating that hesitation in the first place.
Totally.
But okay, so then what about when we do hear that flat out no?
Yes.
Is that always a dead end?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
A lot of times, no is just a pause.
Okay.
Or a request for more information. Or even maybe a hidden desire for reassurance.
Okay.
And this is where our own courage comes in.
Courage. What do you mean?
It takes courage to not take that no personally,
Right.
to not let it trigger our own fears of rejection or failure.
Okay.
And it takes courage to keep the conversation going in a way that's respectful and curious,
Yeah.
and ultimately in service of the client's best interests.
So how do we do that?
Right.
How do we keep that conversation flowing without being pushy or disrespectful?
Right. So one technique that Coach Dan recommends is what he calls gentle pressure.
Gentle pressure.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not about manipulating or coercing anyone,
Right.
but it's kind of about nudging them to think critically about their options
Okay.
and the potential consequences of inaction.
So it's like that friend that gives you that little push to go do that thing.
Exactly.
You're a little scared to do, but it'll be good for you.
It's like that little nudge to step outside the comfort zone,
Yeah.
but it's for your own good.
Right.
And so it's about challenging their assumptions and helping them to see that while making a decision might feel uncomfortable, staying stuck in their current situation isn't going to get them any closer to their goals.
Yeah. I can see how that could be helpful.
Yeah.
But I imagine it takes finesse.
Yes, it does.
To do that well.
It does.
How do we walk that line between being supportive but not being pushy
Right.
or disrespectful?
It all comes down to intention.
Okay.
If your main goal is just to close the deal,
Right.
no matter what, that's going to come across and likely backfire.
Yeah.
But if you genuinely care about the well-being of the client,
Yeah.
and you truly believe that what you have to offer can help them,
Right.
that sincerity, it will come through.
So it's about leading with the empathy
Absolutely.
and with the authenticity.
Yes.
Even when we're facing resistance.
Even when you're facing resistance, yes. And that's where the inner work comes in.
Uh-huh.
We need to be aware
Yes.
of our own fears and insecurities around money and sales.
Yeah.
So they don't end up kind of hijacking the conversation.
You know what? I relate to that so much because I used to have this huge fear
Okay.
of coming across as desperate
Yeah.
or pushy.
No.
And it made it really hard for me to be assertive in those money conversations.
Right. And that's a really common fear. And
Yeah.
it often stems from those early messages that we got about money.
Yeah.
That idea that it's scarce
Right?
and that we shouldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And that asking for what you're worth is somehow greedy or impolite.
It's crazy how those early experiences
I know.
shape our beliefs.
So powerful.
Even as adults.
Yeah.
You'd think we'd be over it by now.
You would think, right?
But no,
It's still there.
they're so powerful.
So then what do we do about that?
Yeah.
I mean, how do we...
So that's why it's so important to do our own work on those money beliefs.
Okay.
Because if we haven't confronted and healed our own anxieties around money,
They're going to leak into our interactions
oh, for sure.
with
Okay.
clients,
Yeah.
creating this whole dynamic of scarcity and fear.
So then how do we even begin
Yeah.
to get more comfortable with that?
Well, it starts with awareness.
Okay.
So you want to pay attention to your own thoughts and feelings when the subject of money comes up.
Okay.
You know what triggers your resistance.
Yeah.
What stories are you telling yourself?
Yeah.
And once you can identify
Mm-hmm.
those limiting beliefs,
Okay.
you can start to challenge and reframe them.
I love that idea of reframing.
Yes.
Because, instead of thinking I can't afford it,
Yeah,
it's like, okay, well, how can I make this work?
exactly. It's
Why?
a total shift.
Yeah. And it changes the energy too.
Totally.
But what about like the practical side of things? Are there specific techniques that we can use to overcome objections and sort of guide the conversation in a more productive direction?
Yes, there are. The power of storytelling.
Storytelling.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you encounter an objection, instead of, diving into this logical defense,
Okay.
you share a story
Okay.
of how your product or service has helped someone overcome a similar challenge.
So instead of just like rattling off features and benefits,
Exactly.
you're making it real for them.
Yeah.
You're painting a picture.
You're making it relatable.
Okay.
So you might say something like, I had a client who was in a similar situation, feeling hesitant about the investment.
Yeah.
But once they took the leap of faith, they saw X result within just a few weeks.
It's like that social proof.
It is social proof.
Yeah.
It's that we all want to see that other people have done it.
Right.
That it worked for them.
Yeah.
That it's possible.
Right. And that makes it feel less risky.
Makes it feel less risky, exactly.
Okay.
And this actually ties into another really powerful concept that Dan talks about, which is transitioning from features to emotions.
Okay, interesting. What does that mean?
So instead of getting bogged down in all those,
Details.
technical details, we want to tap into the underlying emotional needs and desires that are driving the hesitation.
Okay, how do we do that?
Well, remember when someone says, I can't afford it?
Yeah.
It often goes much deeper than their current financial situation.
Yeah, it's like all those messages we've heard.
It is all those messages
for years and years and years.
About money. It could be, phrases that they heard growing up. It could be, this scarcity mindset that's been ingrained for years.
It's like we're dealing with not just their present moment concern, but like literally years.
Years of subconscious programming around money.
Right. Wow.
So instead of reinforcing that scarcity mindset, we can actually help them to break free from it.
Okay.
By asking questions like, what if money were no object? What would you be able to achieve?
Right.
What dreams would you dare to pursue?
Wow, those are really powerful questions.
It shifts the whole focus, right?
Yeah.
From limitations to possibility.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
And it allows them to connect to their deeper motivation, their why for wanting to make a change.
That's beautiful.
Right. And once that emotional connection is established, the conversation about money often becomes much less daunting.
This has been so insightful. I feel like we've really gone beyond the surface level of just sales techniques.
We have.
To the heart of what it really means to have these really courageous, client-centric conversations about money.
Yeah, and you got it.
Yeah.
And remember, this is a journey, not a destination.
So true.
It takes practice and self-awareness.
Yeah.
And a willingness to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But, as you build these money muscles,
I like the money muscles.
as you become more confident and courageous in these conversations, you'll not only see your sales increase, but you'll also experience just this much deeper sense of fulfillment in your work.
Yeah.
Because you're really making a difference in your clients' lives.
Okay, so as we're wrapping up this deep dive, let's leave our listeners with some steps that they can take away.
Okay.
So first, remember to reframe objections as opportunities for empathy and understanding.
Totally.
Acknowledge how the client's feeling. Create that safe space for them to share their concerns.
Absolutely.
And remember, storytelling is so powerful.
It is.
To help people understand and connect with what you're offering.
Yeah, it builds trust.
Yeah.
And it creates connection.
Yeah, and it helps them to envision themselves.
Exactly.
Achieving that same success.
It does.
And then finally, don't be afraid to tap into that emotional core of these conversations. Help your clients to connect with their deeper motivation.
Their why.
Yeah, and to paint that picture of all the possibilities that await them on the other side of those fears.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
Mastering the money conversation is about more than just closing deals.
It is.
It's about building relationships, empowering your clients, and creating a world where financial abundance and fulfilling work go hand in hand.
That's a wrap on our deep dive into navigating the money conversation.
Yes. Thanks for listening, Deep Divers. I'm Nara Daniels.
I'm Marcus Harrison. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep those courageous conversations flowing.
We hope you enjoyed the deep dive. Subscribe to the podcast for more deep dives as Nara and Marcus traverse the infinite exploration into the mind and soul of you. We'll see you next time on The Dive.